Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Welcome to Mission Evolution, where science and spirituality merge in the quest for human advancement. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. In this hour, we'll journey into the analytical side of the unexplained with Dr. Darryll Walsh, Executive Director of Centre For Parapsychological Studies in Canada, President of Ghost Project Canada, and Director of Research for PPRI, Paranormal Phenomenon Research and Investigation. With a background grounded in science, Dr. Walsh has dedicated his career to exploring the mysteries of death, consciousness, and cryptids, such as Bigfoot, while maintaining a disciplined, data-driven approach to the paranormal. From near-death experiences to the psychology of hauntings, we'll examine how science and the supernatural meet in the search for truth. Stay tuned. Our evolution begins right now. Dr. Walsh, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So, Dr. Walsh, what originally drew you to study the paranormal from a scientific perspective?
Well, it's interesting because there are things that drove me to want to understand the paranormal, and then there were things that drove me to do it as a science. I had originally set out to become a clinical psychologist, and I wanted to deal with gay teens, and so therefore I studied a very, quite a varied and wide field of different family therapies, sex therapy, suicide, drugs, the whole shebang, except for anxiety disorders, of which my family and myself suffer from, but it was the one blind spot in that. And what had happened was, while I was doing this, an opportunity came to teach at the Nova Scotia Community College. And that same year, I had founded the Centre For Parapsychological Studies in Canada, which I've regretted ever since because typing that out is saying it and typing it is rather annoying. But anyway, and what it was a group of us that were interested in trying to understand the paranormal, and then use, instead just, which we did, just collecting the information, we wanted to do analysis. Simultaneous to that, I was teaching. And so I took a scientific view because I was still studying to be a psychologist at this point. So they kind of merged. Psychology fell off for various reasons, and parapsychology stayed on. I also taught thanatology classes on death and dying, and cryptozoology. And I'm actually teaching a cryptozoology class now. And where are we? Wednesday, I'm teaching about lake monsters and sea monsters. So it happened accidentally. When I have people coming to my classes, whether it's my writing classes or my parapsychology classes, but in particular the writing classes, I tell them, listen, right now you've got ideas, perhaps, maybe you've got something written down or typed up and you're wondering where you should go or if you should proceed or whatever. And I'm reminded, and I should have looked this up, but the quote that's in Lord of the Rings when Bilbo says, if you step outside your door and you don't watch where your feet are, God knows where you're going to end up at. And then I start off as in grade 7 and then start, because it was actually grade 7 when I was 12 when this whole started, primarily with cryptozoology. And then I start and I go through all the different things, from doing TV series to being books published to doing interviews like this to giving talks, inspirational talks as well. Documentaries, blah, 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 blah. And I go through the whole thing. And I say, so I didn't expect to do this. This wasn't where I started.
You have one of the most unique academic backgrounds in parapsychology in Canada. How does your scientific training influence your investigative methods?
Well, I got to tell you, it's a great bullshit thing. It comes on in the back of your mind when you get told something that just is way too out there. Now, interdimensional beings, Bigfoot's an interdimensional being, or as I usually say, don't show me a pile of dung and tell me it's a unicorn. I need better evidence than that. And there is good evidence coming out of deathbed visions and near-death experiences, and some of the Bigfoot and cryptids have been discovered. So there are things in all these three fields that I'm into that, including clinical hypnotherapy. Actually, I always forget about that one because I don't practice it. If I was paid for all the degrees and everything I took for something and never practiced, I'd be rich. So yeah, my science does, there are two parts of me. There's a 10-year-old boy that just loves the story. So if you tell me in Nova Scotia, which is no Bigfoot, but let's say you tell me down outside of New Glasgow, a big hairy monster was seen, and I tell my classes in cryptozoology, one of the students asked me why. I said, because it's fun. It's monsters. That's why we do it. Parapsychology, we're trying to understand the spirit. We're trying to understand the soul. We're trying to understand consciousness and whether or not we can peek into the other side. And if they come here, there must have to be this exchange of atmospheres, environments. However, I said, if we're looking for cryptids, we're doing it because it's fun and we want to find the hairy monsters. So there's the 10-year-old boy in me that still can be frightened with ghosts. Forerunners in particular scare the living you-know-what out of me. Other things, I'm a little more jaded. And then there's the Dr. Walsh bit that needs a lot more than just somebody saw something. Now, the interesting thing is, we had both Elliot, who's going to be on, I believe, at 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, or is going to be taped at that time. He and I put together a class, or I should say a show, called Frontiers of the Paranormal. And what we were going to do, essentially what you're doing. We were going to use non-standard investigative tools to try to understand what's going on. There have been great strides in parapsychology that people have just forgot about. Poltergeist in particular. There was a fascinating study in 2012. What it would portend is amazing, but nobody ever did the study over again. No, it's been ignored. We couldn't get the class. I'll keep saying that. We could not get the show off the air because we weren't going to be able to. For instance, there are certain, you can recreate a haunted house, essentially. People go in and they will feel like it's a haunting. To us, it was just showing how various factors that we have never taken into account before can cause certain things. We were not saying there's no ghosts. We were not saying there's no soul or there's no hauntings. It was just to explain.
Well, can you explain?
People don't want that.
Can you explain the mission of the Centre for Psychological Studies in Canada and how it contributes to the legitimate research in this field?
Well, we've been at it since 1996. So we've collected a lot of data and done analysis. For instance, I've done analysis personally of 7,300 Bigfoot reports, and got to see that most people have it wrong, and they're not going to find Bigfoot the way they're looking for it. So we've been, and now through Ghost Project Canada, what we're doing is we are taking we're less picky. It's more of a folklore and beliefs and supernatural events that are reported. Not necessarily are we going through them and thinking, are this real, this not? And what we're doing is we're doing analysis, geographical analysis, where werewolves most prevalent at, where are ghost ships most prevalent at, and you'll say yes, it'll be the oceans or the seas, and that's not entirely true. So there's a little teaser there. Where are all these things mostly reported, and how are they different across the country? And so we're trying to do this in a statistical and geographical analysis to understand where people believe these things, why they might believe these things, and who knows, we might actually find, truth somewhere. Now, the truth sometimes is not going to be what everybody wants to hear, or even myself. But sometimes I think there's going to be truth that we all want to hear in this field. So it's fascinating. It's enjoyable. It's slow because we need volunteers, and the pandemic really put a dent into everything. So we're kind of slow getting back up at it. But
Well, this leads me to my next question: is what are the biggest misconceptions about parapsychology and those who study it seriously?
This is a bad chair. I'm trying for the first time, so my apologies.
It's a poltergeist.
It's a poltergeist.
I'm convinced.
Yes, if anything can go wrong, it will. Could you repeat that question, please?
I can't imagine why you need me to, but
I was killing myself at the moment.
so what are the biggest misconceptions about parapsychology and those who study it seriously?
They think we're fools, for one thing. There is a strong belief in parapsychology, in ghosts. It's not in the whole paranormal. They pick and choose. It's very a la carte. But once you start taking into account science, they think you're a fool. In England, it's called going down the road to Loch Ness, because, of course, there is no monster in Loch Ness, but there's something either psychological or physical that's causing all these reports, and I think it's woven in with sociology and a whole bunch of things. But anyway, to the scientists, you're a fool if you do that. So if they call that down the road to Loch Ness, if you're going to investigate haunted houses, or if you're going to investigate deathbed visions, and things like that. So even in Paris, the psychological, like the Society for Psychological Society for Psychological Research, the foremost ghost event, what was originally parapsychology or ghost research, even now has their talks are turning much more less from being specific and where's the evidence to just throwing things out there. And so therefore I've noticed that across parapsychology that scientists are still officially, think we're fools, although a lot of them believe in what we're doing. They just can't be seen to be doing that, nor do they have the time.
So can you separate genuine paranormal psychology from hoaxes, misinterpretations, or psychological factors?
Well, Loch Ness is the best example. We know there's no plesiosaur in Loch Ness. Could not happen, period, full stop. So what is Loch Ness? So there's psychological things going on. People want to see the monster. It's a very creepy lake. Most times it's filmed when it's beautiful, but really it's not when it's dark and going to be stormy. There's the economic aspect of it, of course. More people report something strange, like a wave, whatever, then people will come and spend money and all that. There's the sociological aspect that we need monsters. And because it's fun, it's scary a bit. But if they're in the lake and I'm safe up in a hotel on the side of the river, then I'm fine.
Sorry to interrupt. We're going to have to pick up on the other side of a station break. Dr. Walsh and I will return very shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is any of this real? With us this hour discussing Validating the Paranormal is Dr. Darryll Walsh, Director of Research for PPRI.net. Dr. Walsh, has modern technology such as AI, data and analytics, or infrared imaging changed the way you study or document the paranormal?
Short answer, no. Infrared is overblown. And of course, it's only an image on, a piece of equipment, usually not recordable, and tells you nothing. AI, that has a a brain of its own, and obviously, because that's what it is. So therefore, I think it could be used to do analytical work, and we'll certainly use it for Ghost Project Canada. But I think we also want to keep the hard sciences as well, the mathematics, and to this. So yes, they do and they don't. Ghosts are extinct. That's what I tend to tell people, because it has changed over 100 years how we validate something is haunted or if it's a ghost. We no longer see a physical being. There's no clanking chains, for one thing. And yes, that was a thing. But no, there's no clanking chains. There's no figures in white unless it's a hoax. What we do is we record something, and then we listen to the white noise and pretend we hear voices, or sometimes we actually do hear voices but have nothing to do with the haunting. So I had the Paranormal Symposium we have here at Halifax every year, which is November 1st this year. The first year I gave a talk on how ghosts are extinct, and the usual way we would go looking for one, we don't do anymore. Or I should say, most people don't do anymore because they see TV and they think that's the way it's supposed to be, and it's not. I always said to my class, if you're going to go look for ghosts, and explained already more or less how to do it, I said, if you're having fun, you're doing it wrong. Looking for ghosts, being a parapsychologist, is an extremely boring, poverty-stricken, long, intensive study of something, and can be fun when you first start, but if you're doing it right, it's going to bore you to tears. It's going to be very statistical. You're going to have to do a lot of analysis of let's say, anything you find, including EVPs. And although I don't put any stock in them, still, yes, people do, and why not? But you can do analysis of it anyway. We might
In your experience, is there a typical haunting, or do manifestations significantly vary from case to case?
Well, they do. They vary. You know why they vary? They vary from the people who are investigating them. The hauntings haven't really changed at all, period, full stop. They're there. It's like 1 + 1 = 2, and all of a sudden someone comes in and says, well, 1 + 1 = 25. People, it's called the investigator effect. People will find what they're looking for. And because of TV, they think they have to go down to the basements and the dirty places and have the green color on and all the equipment. And there's like 10, 15 people down there. And it's like, nobody should be down there. If that's a haunted place, and also you should be able to do it at noon hour, not just at nighttime, you would set up the equipment. And you would be outside, and then you would do the analysis of what is going on inside. You should never be inside a haunted house. But that has changed from when, the science of it, the way that we're supposed to do it, morphed because of the internet and TV. So right now, parapsychology is not thought of in a high, thought of very highly thought of. It is, and cryptozoology isn't either because of the TV shows. The internet and TV has more or less ruined a lot of sciences, not just our sciences and not just cryptids and this kind of thing, and our reputations. It has changed, and not for the best. But what everybody on my side or somebody else's side is looking for, it hasn't changed. There's still a spirit there. I believe there's a spirit there because I've seen things that I believe would indicate that our soul, we do have a soul. Both my parents had deathbed visions before they died. So I mean, I believe in that. There's enough evidence in near-death experiences to show that we do have a soul, we do have some sort of spirit that goes on and comes back sometimes, is either sent back or comes back on their own. And every time we investigate farther and farther into a near-death experience, the more we prove it. Unlike, let's say, some of the other things that we don't have as much luck. Maybe they're more amorphous.
Well, we'll get into near-death experiences in a little bit. I find it absolutely fascinating. But you were mentioning speaking and teaching courses in parapsychology. How receptive are students of applying critical thinking to topics that are often dismissed by, like you were saying, mainstream academia?
Yeah, I find the students that come in obviously are highly motivated. They're very interested in the course. They're very obviously interested in the various topics that's there. I've also found, with exceptions, there might be one or two, but usually they ask hard questions. They ask, they push me, which is why I love teaching. There's always one or two people that are going to push you. What does that mean? I've been teaching before, and somebody has pushed me somewhere, and I thought, hey, I never did think of that. And that's fascinating. And so anyway, yeah, I usually have about 75%, 85% of the students will be critical thinkers. They're there because they're very interested in the topic, but they just don't want me to tell them Bigfoot exists and that's that. They want some evidence. They want to talk about breeding populations, whatever it is. If it's thanatology with death and dying, they want to understand exactly what usually goes on when that happens. And they have some very interesting questions. Most eventually are unanswerable. Same with near-death experiences. So yes, and then you get usually the one or two that are all in. I mean, they're there because they already believe and they already have a set belief system, and that's fine because they could be right. For some of the topics, they could be very right. We don't know yet. We haven't managed to put our hands on things like psychokinesis and telepathy and things like that. They're very amorphous. And as soon as we think we have the pin down, and I was actually, for very quick, I was with Dr. Michael Persinger, who in the 90s was often in a lot of programs and seen as a skeptic, but he wasn't. We had gone to interview him for my show, Shadow Hunter. So we were looking for a scientific view of all these things, and we thought we wanted a little bit of skepticism. But he freaked me out. One thing, he was a neuroscientist, and I did not take neurobiology, so therefore I was lost. But the parts that he did speak of, and his psychokinesis was what he did. He spoke of when a student came to talk to him, and there was a pen on the desk between them, and it hadn't moved. It was his pen hadn't moved. She moved that pen towards him with her mind. She was like, I am reasonably far. Well, I can reach, but let's say she was like this, that she could not touch it. She could not blow on it. There was that pen moved. Now, because of the psychokinesis, I was kind of, I don't know. But because I have the respect of that man who has since died, and because he was a person who used science to look at things, and he believed in psychokinesis and he believed in telepathy, he had an interesting theory about it, but he came at it from the scientific way. He believed in our spirit. And so therefore, if the person you thought would be a skeptic and would be too hardcore was actually a believer. And it was fascinating. And when you told me that story about the pen moving, I mean, I have to take that seriously because I respect the man. He's he's contributed to parapsychology in various ways that even today we think of. And he's not the kind of guy to BS or be BS'd.
So what ethical considerations come into play when you're studying people's personal experience of the paranormal?
Well, that starts to come into clinical parapsychology, which I have studied, and Elliot has as well. You have to be careful because you don't know exactly when someone comes to you. Sometimes they're very upset, or they're very discombobulated, which is the perfect word for it. They don't know how to react to this experience that's happened to them. So luckily, I am a psychotherapist, trained as a psychotherapist. I never made it to clinical psychologist, but I at least trained as a psychotherapist. So I know how to deal with them and how to calm them down, explain that these random events happen a lot. These are the various possibilities. They'll ask me then, what do I think? And obviously then I'll give out, well, there's two parts of me. I'll believe it, but the science part of me will force me to try to find evidence for that. But I believe what you are telling me, that there is something going on. Now let's find out what it is. Don't worry about it. It can't harm you. Period. Full stop. End of story. So don't be afraid. And essentially that's how it goes. And so you go with them and you try to understand what's going on. Most times there's something very mundane, but there's always the one or two that you're going to bump into, that you're going to look at and say, I can't explain that one. Yeah, we can't explain that one. And I'll speak to Elliot, bring him in, and he might bring somebody else in that he knows to talk about it. And we do it fairly often. And sometimes, though, we just bump into that wall that we can't understand.
Well, you've studied deathbed visions and near-death experiences. What consistent themes have you found across the cases?
Well, they're fascinating, actually. Deathbed visions. Can you imagine that you're dying and all of a sudden you look up, and they do tend to look up and you see a vision. Now, both my parents could not enunciate that. First, for my father, because my mother and my sister and brother-in-law were there, so I obviously wasn't going to ask Dad, who's coming for you? That just would not have fit in. But he saw somebody, and he was surprised at this person. And I think I know who it probably was. It was my Uncle Bert, because he had predeceased him. So I think it was probably him. For my mother, my sister actually was taking care of Mom that morning. It was supposed to be me, but she gave me the morning off. Mom would have died in her sleep. If it had been me, I would not have woken her up. But she saw something, and she definitely saw something. But she could not enunciate it because she was too far gone. And within 15, 20 seconds, boop, that was it. She had an extremely quick, easy go, and she was in her bed in her own house. And that's how she had said for 40 years how she wanted to go. But there's other people who have said, I see Martha. Now, what the really interesting thing is, she doesn't know Martha's dead. Martha was killed in a car accident or predeceased or somehow. And yet at that moment of death, Martha is there for her. And there the goosebumps just went up that leg all the way up here. And that's why I do this. With near-death experiences.
I hate to leave us as a cliffhanger, but it's time for us to take another station break.
Sure.
Dr. Walsh and I will return. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. What do we see as we die? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing near-death and deathbed experiences is Dr. Darryll Walsh, president of Ghost Project Canada. Darryll, we were talking about deathbed experiences, and do these experiences suggest that consciousness continues after death, or could there be purely neurological explanation? Neurological.
Yeah. Personally, I believe there are enough cases where somebody has, like we said just at the break, which was a beautiful and amazing. I'd like to get a copy of that. I put it on all my social media. It is so beautiful. Just amazing. It just really just wowed me. But
well, I have to give credit to my producer Rob McConnell. That would be his creation.
Well, I'll be talking to Rob, I think, on Wednesday, and yeah, I'll be telling him how amazing he is. So anyway, but something else that's amazing, of course, is the fact that when people are close to death, they do see things that it's impossible for them to see. They might see what's going on. If they arrest, for instance, they might see what the doctor and hear what the doctors are doing and saying and everything. They might see things outside of the room, because you can always say, well, maybe they heard this or they heard that, but they might see something outside the room. And then as things progress, if it's a near-death experience, then they start to see things that you just don't see. The tunnel usually into an area of bright light. Sometimes, depending on how far you go and how fast we yank you back, you might see a being of light, which you will interpret according to your own religion. There's no ID on him. He doesn't have a, hello, my name is Jesus or anything. But if you're Muhammad, you believe, or if you're Islamic, you believe it's Muhammad. If you're Christian, you believe it's Jesus, and on and on. And so it's fascinating. And then the really good ones are if you stay for a little while and your life flashes before your eyes, but it's different. You feel how you made other people feel during your life. It's not how you felt going through, it's what you've done. And that's the scary part, as well as the goosebumpy part, is the fact that life review is going to make you feel very uncomfortable, because whether we consciously do it or not, sometimes we just aren't nice people. It's just human psychology. And then you're sent back. Afterwards, you come back, you have a much more broader view of the world. You have problem with electronics, so maybe I had a near-death experience, who knows? I constantly do that, but they don't fear death anymore. Problems with electronics, particularly watches. They have this much warmth and good feeling towards people. They are more willing to live in the moment and not worry about the visa bill, the house is going to be sold or whatever, because they've gone beyond that. They've transcended this boring life that we're in. And if we go back to deathbed visions, sometimes people come for them, and that's the part. And they don't know these people are dead. And sometimes they do know they're dead, but the fascinating ones are the ones that they do not know have predeceased them. And, they come for them, they see them. And so that's the fascinating part of it. So we know that part of us, our spirit, our soul, however you want to call it, goes on. Now, when we're over there is usually a boundary. It could be a river, usually a river. It could be a river. It could be a stone wall. It could be something. But if you go past that, you're not coming back. Now, obviously, people who've gone past that can't come back and tell us what's on the other side. So we don't know what heaven or the afterlife or whatever. We just know this way station that's between us and between whatever happens after us. And I would say that it would impart should impart a feeling of safety in us, because most of the stories that happen are very, very good. There's a few small ones that are not, and the problem is the reports of near-death experiences have gone from churches back in the 70s and 80s saying, no, that's all devil worships. It's demons. It's nothing. Then came people writing near-death, this in the light, that in the light, and whatever in the light. And they were pretending they had near-death experiences. And they were making a lot of money off it in the 90s and in the early 2000s. Then the churches saw that there was a good thing there. And some of them, not all of them, of course, but some of them then did a 180 and embraced near-death experiences. So some of the stories that are positive, you have to be careful of, and some of the stories that are negative, you have to be careful of, because ideology might be total BS, the story, or ideology is, shading it. So,
influencing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So from your research, how do deathbed visions differ from hallucinations and dream states?
Well, it is true, but the difference in the ones that we know something strange is happening, and is because they're not under particular drugs. They're not under hallucinogens. They are not looking like they are hallucinating or anything. My father, and I assume my mother, but my father definitely was not hallucinating when he saw somebody come. And he was perfectly normal. He was not on any drugs. He was enjoying fish and chips very well for the last time. And so he was in a good place. But the reason we know that it's not just hallucinations, it's not drug-induced, is the fact that they know things that they couldn't possibly know. Now, not every deathbed vision is going to know, something. Usually it's somebody they already know is dead, is coming back for them to help them. When my mother died, it was funny, as a scientist, I've often wondered, how much do I really believe, though? Am I too much of a skeptic or a doubter? But that day when Mom died, I knew, as much as I can know anything, like 1 + 1 = 2, that she was up with Dad. He had predeceased her by 10 years. And there was no way, no doubt or whatsoever in my heart. And it was funny because as a Christian, I always wondered, how much is my skepticism towards my field of study affecting my belief? Are my prayers just going through something I've done since I was a kid? But yeah, now I can't prove that. I can't say that in any way, shape, or form proves the afterlife. But I'm a hardcore scientist at times, and there are enough near-death experiences. There are enough deathbed visions that are impossible to explain, and science just falls down. There's no way to come up with something, but no, we push that aside.
So what does your research, what has your research taught you about humanity's deepest fears and hopes surrounding death?
Well, it's interesting. We fear death. We always will. That's ingrained with us. There's a lot of things that we carry with us that will not disappear because we have society, and society tells us one way or the other how to feel, what to do, or whatever. There's still going to be thousands of generations have to pass. So we're going to fear death. We used to be closer to death years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, and everybody moved away to cities and families, separated, because it was just a part of life. And even in Cape Breton, up to the very recent time, it was just a part of life. They had the person died, they waked them in the house. Sometimes they heard beforehand, the forerunner, they heard the undertaker come in his cart in the middle of the night, throw the boards onto the ground, start to pound to make the coffin, and go away. And then the next morning they get up, and the deceased obviously was still there, but there was nobody outside. And then you would hear, the cart or the car come down with the coffin. And if it were, we were closer to death, so we feared it less, but we still fear it an awful lot. And I think we latch on to near-death experiences because of the fact that it points towards, a place where we don't need to fear to go. And that is, I think, the strongest thing that's happened over the past 40 years. We have come back to death, but in a different way. It's not with us all the time, with our family and as a part of our life, but we've come back to it intellectually. And I don't know how much, I can't tell, and nobody can tell how much that intellectual has also become emotional. And that's the important part, because you have to be, if you're going to believe there is a afterlife, and there appears to be so, and science is proving that, and as well as parapsychology, is very strongly. But you have to be emotionally invested so that the fear goes away. And
well, let's change gears a little bit. You've analyzed over 7,300 Bigfoot reports.
Yep.
That's extraordinary. So what patterns have emerged from that data?
Oh, am I going to get the death threats when I come out with my book? When I tell them they're wasting their time and they should go home. And I can be rude like that as well when I go on TV and watch the shows. People are just going out there to drink their body weight in beer, and that's the same thing they did when they used to hunt for regular animals. But I did come up with a lot of interesting implications. I can't tell you the main one, because if I do, I give the whole thing away, and I do want to have a book come out very soon. But I will tell you some of the things. They don't always. Okay, they're not violent towards humans. Period, full stop, end of story. Recently, it started with the 411 books, people disappearing when they were in national parks in the United States. And now, if you go on YouTube, the stories about Bigfoot doing this and Bigfoot doing that and all these things, total BS. If the Bigfoot prior to the internet, and my analysis stopped at 1998, because that's when the internet went critical mass. And so I knew from 1998 onwards, people could lie very easily, and there was no way we could tell. Whereas the ones before, the main characters in the field investigated and came up and said what they thought and had the evidence. And so we could still look at it. Same with a lot of the stories. And then I stopped at 1920 because prior to that, newspapers just made things up. Every time they mentioned a gorilla or something like that. So I did 1920 to 1998 so I could understand and get an idea. Now, I pushed some stories aside because they were BS, but I did two analyses. I did the analysis of the stories I believed, and then I brought the ones in that I did not believe, and it did not move, the evidence meter very much. So I knew there was some truth in the bulk of the stories. They are not violent towards humans. They will. If you're in a caravan, let's say, and they shake the caravan, it's more they're interested in what that thing is. You just happen to be inside. So relax. It's not after you. It just has this wonderful thing new thing. It is violent towards other animals that it perceives as a threat. And dogs being stupid, tend to do things like run towards it.
Well, it's time for we're running towards another station break. We'll pick up on the other side. Please stay with us as Dr. Walsh and I continue to explore parapsychology and the unknown. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. What's the impact of the individual upon studying the paranormal? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Darryll Walsh. Darryll, when filming or photographing haunted and abandoned sites, have you ever captured something that defied logic?
Not personally. I have seen a couple pictures that people have taken that are interesting to me. I have not personally taken anything that was suspicious. Photographs are interesting. You've now with digital, it's become very difficult to determine truth because it can be manipulated. Luckily, some people are manipulated really badly, and you can tell. There was one picture that was given to Elliot Van Dusen, which will be on later, and a colleague of mine. We have by the way, a podcast called Dueling Parapsychologists, where we argue about certain things. And he had a picture given to him by somebody. And I looked at it and said, oh my God, I could do better than that. Faking that picture. Unfortunately not. I have not. But I have seen a ghost, if you want to hear that story.
Sure. I'm sure everybody would like to.
Now, I haven't seen a ghost. And, I had gone through life and done all this and taught and everything. And I had never seen a ghost. And people were asking me, have you seen a ghost? Have you seen a ghost? Have you seen a ghost? No, sorry. That just doesn't happen to me. Well, this was about 4 years ago now, we were giving a talk at the Halifax Weston. Elliot was busy talking about something, and I decided I would wander. It was getting a little bit deep, and I was not supposed to talk for a while. So I left. I bumped into a couple staff members. I got a couple ghost stories from them. They believe the whole place is haunted. They mentioned the Atlantic Room. So I walked down the hall, and I went into pulled the door open of the Atlantic Room. Now, as you open up the door, there's this hallway you walk into where you would have all the coats and everything. And then there's the opening to walk into the major room. I had not taken 2 steps into that room when I knew I was not supposed to be there. I don't know what it was, but my brain was screaming to get out of that room. Now, it's funny, as a scientist, I pushed myself to keep walking into the room. I was thinking infrared possibility, electromagnetic, or there really is something bizarre because I've never felt like this or had anything explained to me like this. It's unexplainable, just that you aren't supposed to be there and there's something pushing you back towards the door. So I got to the back of the room, just tables with, tablecloths on them and everything in white, and that was fine. So I forced myself to the back of the room. And then I said, well, okay, well, this is a nice experiment, but I'm getting out of here. As I turned, there was about, how far was he? About 50 feet away, maybe 40 feet away, at most 30. A little boy, about 5, 6 years old. He was blonde. He had a white polo shirt on. He had beige shorts, white socks. Can't quite remember the shoes, but something. And he was down on his hands and knees, lift up a tablecloth. Now I could see both the tablecloth in my time, and I could see the tablecloth he was pulling up. And then he went underneath that table. And the whole thing lasted at most, 5 seconds, let's say, something like that. Of course, it lasts an eternity when it's happening to you. So I started for the door, and then no, you got to go look. And so anyway, I went, looked, pulled up the tablecloth, nobody there. Then I left. And then I went to talk to a few people. Stupidly, now I teach, listen, all the equipment in the world is pointless and useless to go do in haunting if you're going to look for a ghost. Now, if you know a ghost is somewhere, like I just did, that's when you go grab the equipment and find out what's going on. Did Dr. Walsh think of that? No. He was so freaked out the first time he saw a ghost that he went and spoke to a few people, and actually brought a couple of people one person who's supposed to be sensitive, and just another person. Do you feel what? And everybody felt. I don't want to use the word evil, but that's as close to evil as I could. If I had to say I felt something evil, that would be the experience, because of whatever it was that was pushing me out. Even Elliot stepped in the room and turned around and came right back out afterwards. So there's something wrong with that room. Unfortunately, I was too upset because after, this had been 30 professional years and previous years before that, and all of a sudden I saw one. And no, I forgot the equipment was at the back of the room, and I could have grabbed it, gone in and measured. Because as I spoke before, if a ghost happens, if you can get one that frequently shows up, well, then you can have all the equipment set, and then something has to be exchanged. In a near-death experience, the same thing should happen as well. If we're leaving this plane of existence and going somewhere else, when that happens, some part of our environment has to go. That's more normal physics. Now, this might be super normal physics, I'm not sure. And some part of that environment has to come here. Now, it might be microscopic. It might be just a cold spot. It might be no feeling whatsoever. But if we could find a frequent haunting, let's say it happens every Thursday night at 7 o'clock, just to make a kind of flippant joke about it, then we could set all the equipment around and see what happens at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night.
So how does the emotional or psychic atmosphere of a location affect investigators during the field work?
Well, they do the same thing to me. They forget that they have a brain. It depends on exactly what you feel when you go someplace real. Forget TV. Throw everything that's out. That's so fake, it's breathtaking. So forget that. But if you actually happen to wander into a place, much as myself, others that I know in my group have done so, it affects you, obviously, because there's this feeling. And what it's doing, it's distorting what you're supposed to be doing. But you need to analyze it. You need to say, okay, what is this? What could be causing this? How is this affecting me? And you have to be doing that, as well as trying to understand what's generating it or what your job is supposed to be. I fell down on my job that evening. And I'll forever kick myself for it, that I did not. It overwhelmed me, and it tends to do that to a lot of people. And what it does, it kind of makes you forget that, your training and everything. If you were lucky enough to do this, to come across various places or a particular place, and it has a regular haunting, and you are used to it, well, then that's fine. You can kind of turn off the effect and the feeling and the force that's there, and you can then try to understand what's going on. But yes, it does affect, and you have to understand that. You have to understand how you're going to explain it is going to be tinged with how you felt when you were there. There's no ands, ifs, buts, and ors about it, you know.
So you're a featured. I want to get into this before we run out of time. You're a featured figure at the 2025 Halifax Paranormal Symposium. What What will your presentation focus on there?
Well, I could be talking about just about anything. Usually I talk about the ghosts and whether they're extinct. I might talk about this particular ghost program or ghost happening and how I failed in my job, which would be probably what I will speak of. I do know that cryptids are being spoken to, so I might have something to say about them. But generally, I think I might just explain how much opportunity I wasted, just to explain to them how you can be overwhelmed by what's going on to you, and no matter whether you're a believer or a skeptic, and that's going to color what you do. So, and I'll be there with my books, of course, and hopefully selling a lot of those, so yeah, that'll be, and kind of pinch hitting anywhere that I'm needed actually to do various things. I'll be doing the photography. I'm doing some of the publicity for it. So I have many hats, with the symposium every year. So
how does the symposium advance public understanding and academic respect for paranormal research?
well, hopefully they look at it and they think, okay, well, there's this thing happening every year and it's being taken serious. And there are serious people involved. Laura Warren, for instance, and I were in a program, did a 8-week program or show for AMI back in 2020. So, and she's a very serious psychic. Now, whether she's a real psychic or not, I haven't trained her. I haven't tested her, I should say. But I do believe in her seriousness. And so I give her the benefit of the doubt until such time, something might come up. But it's serious people talking about serious topics, and they're taking it serious. And so everybody's coming. It's usually 120 people roughly, and they're coming from all over the place, from the States, from Ontario, everywhere. And they come. And of course, Haligonians, now are knowing that there's a symposium. And it was my idea to call it a symposium rather than convention, because I wanted it to be taken seriously. And I wanted people to know that we were taking the topic seriously. We weren't just having jokers come in and making fools of themselves or whatever. We were talking in and investigating and trying to understand, the paranormal from all avenues. And so we were looking at it from all avenues, and we had different people from all avenues to come in and try to put their point of view and see if that would advance our understanding and the people that are there, their understanding of all these topics, that are out there.
Well, finally, how can events like Halifax Symposium help evolve humanity's broader understanding of consciousness, death, and reality itself?
Well, because those are the main topics we have every year. We have people coming with their own views on it. Myself, I can come at it from just about every area, because I studied all the different areas, but other people coming from being a psychic, or someone might come in from being a medium or what have you. We might have a psychologist or a psychiatrist who spoke about the darker aspects of it, demonology, for instance. Somebody else might come in and speak about consciousness itself and how we just don't have a firm grip on it. It's too amorphous right now. So although they do believe there is something akin to the soul that is consciousness, and that there is the two brain syndrome, there is the physical brain, and I do believe that there is also this other part of the brain that is not necessarily tied to our bodies.
Well, Dr. Walsh, I hate to do it, but we have run out of time.
That's fine.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, no, it was my pleasure. It really was. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Our guest this hour has been Dr. Darryll Walsh, Executive Director of the Centre for Psychological Studies in Canada, President of Ghost Project Canada, and Director of Research for PPRI.net. Dr. Walsh also will be appearing at the upcoming 2025 Halifax Paranormal Symposium taking place November 21st in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where leading researchers and investigators will gather to explore the next frontiers of paranormal science. To learn more about Dr. Walsh and his work, visit ppri.net or cpsc-canada.com. For past and upcoming episodes of Mission Evolution, visit xzbn.net. Until next time, remember, evolution is not an end, but an awakening. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit our website, missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right again here next time as this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.